The slide on the screen showed a list of vulnerabilities in a contractor's network. I was halfway through explaining why their patch cycle needed to change when someone knocked on the conference room door. Not a polite tap. A firm official knock. The room went quiet. Contractors, 2 captains from my unit, a civilian project manager. Everyone looked at the door. We weren't in a SCIF, just a secure administrative building on Fort Meade, but people don't interrupt a briefing unless something is wrong. The door opened. 2 military police officers stepped in. One of them scanned the room and asked for me by rank. Major Whitaker. I stood up. When MP walks in and calls your name, your brain goes to one place first. Family emergency. My son. Car accident. Hospital. Yes. We need a moment with you, ma'am. The room stayed silent. No one pretended to shuffle papers. No one checked a phone. I closed my laptop and told the team we'd take 5. I stepped into the hallway with them. The door shut behind me. The older MP officer kept his voice neutral. Ma'am, we've received a report forwarded from Anne Arundel County Police. It involves an allegation of financial theft. I nodded once. Whose theft? $500,000. It took a second for that number to land. 500,000. That wasn't a rounding error. That was a headline. From who, I asked. He checked the printed sheet in his hand. The complainant is Brianna Whitaker, my sister. For a split second, I wondered if there was another Brianna Whitaker in Maryland who shared my last name. There isn't. And what exactly is she alleging, I asked? That you stole $500,000 from your family trust. I didn't laugh. It would have sounded unhinged in that hallway. Instead, I asked the only question that mattered. Am I being detained? No, ma'am. This appears to be a financial dispute. We're documenting your statement and notifying your chain of command per protocol. That was the moment it shifted from family drama to military problem. Because when something touches finances and you hold a TS/SC, I clearance the word dispute doesn't stay small for long. We moved to a small admin office down the hall. One MP took notes. The other stayed near the door. I kept my answer short. Yes, there is a family trust. No, I have not taken money unlawfully. Yes, I am the named beneficiary. No, there is no federal money involved. They asked if I could provide documentation. I told them the trustee could. I gave them the company's contact information from memory. They didn't treat me like a suspect. They treated me like someone whose life just got complicated. County police believe this may be civil, the older MP said. But because you're active duty, and the allegation involves a significant amount of money, it was forwarded here. Forwarded here, meaning my battalion commander would know before lunch. I asked one more question. Did she provide evidence? Bank statements and a copy of the trust document. That was interesting. Brianna had never read the trust carefully. She skimmed things. She heard what she wanted to hear. Understood, I said. They finished their notes and told me someone from command would follow up. I walked back toward the conference room. Every step felt heavier than it should have. When I opened the door, every head turned. I didn't offer an explanation. I sat down, reopened my laptop, and picked up where I left off. Slide 12, I said. Your network segmentation is still the issue. No one asked about the MPS. They'd get the story soon enough. I finished the briefing in 20 minutes. Calm voice. Clear recommendations. No shaking hands. Years in uniform teaches you that composure is currency. When it ended, one of the captains lingered. You good, ma'am? Yes, I said. Administrative nonsense. He didn't look convinced, but he nodded. Back in my office, I closed the door and sat down. $500,000. That was the approximate value of the irrevocable trust my grandfather set up before he passed. He'd been a retired colonel. Meticulous. The kind of man who color-coded tax folders. He didn't leave it to the family. He left it to me. Not because I was his favorite, because I was stable. Brianna never forgave that. 3 years ago, I'd authorized a conditional distribution from the trust to help her avoid foreclosure. The trustee handled it directly with her lender. The condition was simple: complete a financial counseling program and stick to the repayment structure. She lasted 6 months. After that, the trustee cut further discretionary support. The last conversation we had about it ended with her saying, "You think you're better than us because you wear that uniform." I hadn't answered. There was nothing to say to that. My desk phone rang. Battalion headquarters. Major Whitaker, the commander, would like to see you. Of course he would. I stood up, adjusted my uniform, and walked across the building to the command suite. The XO was already inside when I entered. The commander didn't waste time. "I've been informed of an allegation," he said. $500,000. Family trust. "Yes, sir." "Is there any truth to it?" "No, sir." He watched my face for a long moment. Not accusatory, evaluating. "Are federal funds involved?" "No, sir." "Have you disclosed this trust on your financial reporting?" "Yes, sir." "Annually." The XO made a note. The commander leaned back in his chair. "Here's where we stand," he said. County forwarded it. MPS documented it. At the moment, it appears to be a civil family dispute. However, if it turns into substantiated financial misconduct, it could trigger a clearance review. There it was. Not an accusation. A possibility. "I understand, sir." "I'm not suspending you," he said. "You'll continue duty as normal. But I expect full transparency. Self-report to security. Provide documentation. We will not be surprised later." "Yes, sir." I left the office with clear instructions and a new reality. Before going back to my desk, I walked straight to the unit security manager's office. "I need to self-report a financial allegation made by a family member," I told him. He looked up slowly. "Go on." I summarized it in 3 sentences. "No drama, no editorializing." He nodded. "Good call coming in. We'll document it. As long as there's no actual misconduct, it shouldn't impact your clearance." Shouldn't. That word carries weight when your career depends on access. By the time I got back to my office, my phone had 3 missed calls from Brianna and 1 text message. "You could fix this if you wanted to." I stared at the screen for a few seconds. Fix this, meaning sign something, transfer something, hand something over. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled up the digital copy of the trust agreement. The same document I'd filed in my annual disclosure. The same document that spelled out exactly who had authority and who did not. If she'd really sent police paperwork with that attached, she either hadn't read it, or she was counting on no one else reading it either. My office felt smaller than it had that morning. Outside, normal base traffic moved past the windows. People walking between buildings. Trucks rolling by. Nothing about the day looked different. Inside my inbox, an email from the XO popped up. "Provide trust documentation to legal review NLT 1600, 4 p.m. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. It was a file with my name on it. I opened the trust document and forwarded it to legal without adding a single extra sentence. There was no point in explaining something that already existed in writing. The document spoke clearly. Irrevocable trust. Sole beneficiary Allison Whitaker. Independent fiduciary management. Conditional discretionary distributions. Clause restricting access by any non-beneficiary, including Brianna. At 1500, I walked to the legal office with a printed copy in a folder. JAG doesn't need drama. They need paper. Captain Morales met me in a small conference room. Early 30s, sharp calm. The kind of officer who reads everything twice. "Major," she said, closing the door behind me. "Let's start simple. Is this trust something new?" "No. It's been disclosed in my annual financial filings since I pinned Major." She nodded. "Good." She flipped through the document page by page. "No rushing, no assumptions. Your sister alleges you diverted $500,000 that was intended for your parents," she said, eyes still scanning text. "There's no provision allocating funds to my parents," I replied. "The trust was structured to prevent that." She stopped on the page I knew she would. Clause 8. Restriction on access requests by named individuals. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "She's specifically listed here," Morales said. Yes. The language was clean. Any attempt by Brianna Whitaker to demand access, exert pressure, or misrepresent beneficiary status was to be treated as harassment and reported to proper authorities. My grandfather didn't write that casually. Morales closed the folder and looked at me directly. "This reads like he anticipated conflict." He did. She leaned back in her chair. "County police attached what they claim are bank statements showing irregular withdrawals. That's not possible. The trustee controls distribution." "Exactly." She tapped her pen once against the table. "We're going to verify authenticity of those statements. If they're altered, this shifts." Shifts how? From civil dispute to potential false reporting. There it was. Not revenge, not betrayal. False reporting. Clean language. On my way back to my office, my phone buzzed again. "Brianna." I let it go to voicemail. Then a text came through. "You're embarrassing the family. Just sign the paperwork and make this go away." Paperwork. I hadn't received any paperwork. That meant she'd already drafted something. I responded once. Send it to the trustee. No emotion. No debate. Her reply came within seconds. "You think hiding behind the army makes you untouchable?" I locked the phone and set it face down. Back at my desk, I logged into the financial disclosure portal and downloaded my last 3 years of filings. Every asset, every account, every trust distribution documented. Transparent. That's the part about being in the army people don't understand. If you hold clearance, you live on paper. Every debt, every outside income, every liability. If I'd stolen $500,000, it wouldn't sit quietly in a checking account. At 16:30, the security manager stopped by. "Legal reviewing your documents," he said. At this point, nothing indicates we need to suspend access. At this point, I repeated. He gave a small shrug. "You know how this works." Yes, I did. Allegations don't sink careers. Patterns do. As long as this stayed what it looked like a family dispute, my clearance wouldn't move. Unless Brianna escalated. At 1800, I pulled into my driveway. My son's backpack was on the kitchen table. Homework spread out. The normalcy felt strange. I checked my voicemail while he worked on math problems. Brianna's voice came through tight and angry. "You think you can just cut us off? Mom and Dad deserve that money. Grandpa would never have wanted this. You've always thought you were better than us." I deleted it. I wasn't going to debate inheritance law in my kitchen. After dinner, once my son was asleep, I opened my laptop again and logged into the trustee portal. No unusual activity. No unauthorized withdrawals. No unexplained transfers. Everything clean. I drafted a short email to Thomas Klein, the fiduciary manager. Subject: confirmation request. I explained the allegation in 2 sentences and asked for formal written confirmation of beneficiary structure and recent distributions. He replied within 30 minutes. Major Whitaker. The trust remains intact. No distributions have been made outside authorized parameters. No funds have been allocated to any individual other than yourself under the terms specified. Clear, professional, unemotional. I saved the email as a PDF. My phone lit up again, this time a number I didn't recognize. I answered. "Major Whitaker." "Yes. This is Detective Hall with Anne Arundel County. I wanted to clarify a few points regarding your sister's complaint." His tone was measured, not accusatory. "Go ahead." "She claims your grandfather verbally promised equal distribution to your parents before he passed." "That's not reflected in the trust," I said. "We've reviewed the document copy she provided. There's no such provision." I didn't comment. "She also alleges you pressured her into signing away her share. She never had a share." Silence for a second. "Understood," he said. "We're verifying the bank statements she submitted. There are formatting inconsistencies." There it was again. Paper doesn't lie well. "Detective," I said carefully, "I've disclosed this trust to the Army for years. There's a record." "That's helpful," he replied. "At this stage, we're not pursuing charges against you." Not pursuing. That was good. Not final, but good. However, he added, "We need to complete due diligence." Of course they did. After I hung up, I sat at the kitchen table longer than I meant to. $500,000. That number wasn't random. It was the full estimated value of the trust. Brianna wasn't claiming a small miscalculation. She was claiming everything. The next morning, I arrived at work early. Before I even made it to my office, the XO intercepted me in the hallway. "Legal wants another copy of the trustee confirmation," he said. "Also, heads up, your sister submitted an additional complaint overnight." "What kind?" He hesitated. "She's alleging you're using your position to intimidate her from pursuing the claim." That almost made me smile. I hadn't spoken to her. "She contacted the Inspector General portal," he added. That stopped the smile. An IG complaint doesn't mean guilt, but it means attention, and attention spreads faster than facts. I nodded once. Understood. When I stepped into my office, my email inbox was already open on the screen. New message from Battalion Commander. Subject line short. "See me at 1000. I set my cover on the desk, closed the door, and sat down slowly. Family drama doesn't usually come with a federal paperwork trail. Mine did. I adjusted my uniform in the reflection of my office window before walking back toward the command suite. At 09:58, I was outside the battalion commander's door. On time, always on time. The XO let me in without small talk. The commander was already seated, hands folded on the desk. The atmosphere wasn't hostile. It was controlled. Major, he began. We've received notice of an Inspector General complaint filed by your sister. Yes, sir. She alleges you're using your position to suppress her legal claim and intimidate her from pursuing recovery of funds. I kept my posture as steady. I have not contacted her regarding this allegation. I assumed as much, he said. But assumption isn't documentation. That was fair. The XO slid a printed sheet across the desk. It was a summary of the IG complaint. Short, emotional, vague, heavy on words like abuse of authority and financial manipulation. Light on facts. She claims the trust was supposed to be distributed equally, the XO said. It wasn't, I replied. Understood. Legal confirms the document you provided supports that. The commander leaned forward slightly. Here's what matters, he said. An IG complaint triggers review. That review may involve interviews. It may involve questions about your financial history. That does not mean wrongdoing, but it does mean scrutiny. Scrutiny in uniform isn't abstract. It touches promotion boards. It touches assignments. It touches perception. Promotion board convenes in 8 weeks, he added. Anything unresolved could raise questions. Not a threat, a reality. I understand, sir. We're not pulling your clearance, he said plainly. There's no indication of misconduct. But if new information surfaces, that changes. New information, meaning whatever Brianna decided to invent next. Continue mission, he said. Full cooperation with legal and security. No direct contact with your sister about the allegation. Understood. Yes, sir. I left the office with the same measured pace I'd walked in with. In the hallway, the weight settled in. Family arguments don't usually get logged into Army systems. Mine now had a file number. Back in my office, I drafted a formal memorandum for record documenting the allegation, my self-report, and my cooperation. Clean professional language. Dates, times, no emotion. If this ever surfaced years from now, I wanted it to read like procedure, not chaos. At 11:30, Captain Morales from JAG called. Major, quick update, she said. We've reviewed the bank statements your sister submitted, and they're not authentic. How certain? Certain enough. Formatting doesn't match the issuing bank. Metadata suggests they were generated from a spreadsheet. That tracked. She either misunderstood something or altered documents. Morales continued. We're coordinating with county on that piece. Understood. There's another issue, she added. The IG complaint states you threatened to leverage military investigators against her. I didn't. I believe you. But it's in writing. Accusations don't need to be true to cause friction. They just need to exist. I haven't contacted her about this at all, I said. Good. Keep it that way. After the call ended, I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling for a moment. Brianna wasn't trying to win a legal argument. She was trying to make the process uncomfortable enough that I'd cave. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I answered. Major Whitaker. This is Inspector General's office. We received a complaint referencing your position and a financial dispute. We need to schedule a brief fact-finding conversation. Of course, I replied. No conclusions have been made, the IG representative said. This is standard procedure. Standard. I agreed to meet that afternoon. When I arrived at the IG office, the atmosphere was clinical. Neutral walls. Neutral tone. A civilian investigator sat across from me with a laptop open. We're here to clarify, she said. Your sister alleges you've implied military consequences if she continues pursuing funds. I haven't spoken to her regarding the allegation, I said. All communication has been limited to one text telling her to direct paperwork to the trustee. Do you have that message? I showed her the screen. Short, direct, nothing threatening. She typed for a moment. Have you ever suggested you could use your position to influence outcomes? No. Have you ever threatened to involve military investigators against her? No. She nodded once. We will document your statement. At this time, we see no evidence of abuse of authority. However, understand that any appearance of leveraging rank in personal matters is taken seriously. I'm aware. She closed her laptop. This appears primarily to be a family financial dispute, she said. But when rank is mentioned, we review. That was the Army in one sentence. Back outside, the air felt colder than it had that morning. By 1700, word had quietly circulated that I'd been in meetings with Command and IG. No one asked directly, but glances lingered a fraction longer than usual. Reputation doesn't vanish in one day. It shifts in inches. That evening, Brianna left another voicemail. You can't scare me with your Army friends, she said. You think your command will protect you? Wait until they see everything. Everything. She didn't have everything. She had a trust she didn't like, and bank statements she'd apparently built on Excel. Still, noise can create doubt. The next morning, I arrived before most of the staff. The security manager was already in his office. IG interview go okay? He asked. Yes. Good. At this stage, we're not initiating any clearance action. There's no derogatory financial information tied to you. Relief didn't show on my face, but it registered internally. As long as it stays that way, he added. It needed to stay that way. Around 900, another email from the XO appeared. Be advised, county detective requesting coordination with base regarding documentation inconsistencies. Inconsistencies. That meant Brianna's paperwork wasn't holding up. At 0935, my desk phone rang again. Detective Hall, we've confirmed the bank statements your sister provided were not issued by the bank she listed, he said. That's concerning. It is, he replied. We need to clarify intent. Intent determines direction. Has she contacted you since he asked? Yes. Threatened? No. Pressured. She implied I could fix this if I signed something. There was a pause. Signed what? She hasn't sent it. Another pause. Understood. After we ended the call, I sat still for a few seconds. This had crossed from misunderstanding to documentation problem. Not mine. Hers. My inbox chimed again. Subject line from JAG, request for additional documentation regarding conditional distributions. I opened it. They wanted proof of the $80,000 payment made to Brianna years ago. Proof it had been authorized properly. Proof it wasn't theft. I reached for the trustee portal again. Family disagreements don't usually require archived payment logs and federal coordination. Mine did. I logged into the trustee portal and pulled up the archived distribution records from 3 years ago. There it was. $80,000. Authorized under discretionary hardship support. Paid directly to Brianna's mortgage lender. Not to her. Not to me. No cash transfer. No withdrawal in my name. Clean. I downloaded the transaction confirmation, the trustee's authorization memo, and the compliance note documenting the conditions tied to that payment. Then I walked it over to JAG. Captain Morales reviewed the documents in silence. This is exactly what we needed, she said finally. The distribution was executed by the fiduciary, not you. Yes, and the condition required completion of financial counseling and repayment structure compliance. Yes, she nodded once. Your sister did not complete the program. No. Morales leaned back. That means she wasn't cut off arbitrarily. She failed to meet conditions. Correct. She closed the file and slid it into a larger folder. With this documentation, her claim that you diverted funds collapses, she said. There's no legal basis for her entitlement. Legal basis. That phrase carries weight. But she added people don't always operate on legal basis. They operate on perception. I didn't disagree. On my way back to my office, I passed 2 junior officers talking quietly in the hallway. They stopped when I approached. They weren't gossiping. They were curious. When police show up and IG gets involved, curiosity spreads. Inside my office, I shut the door and called Thomas Klein, the trustee. He answered on the second ring. Major Whitaker, I need formal certification of the trust structure and confirmation that no unauthorized distributions have occurred. I anticipated that he replied. You're not the first beneficiary to deal with family conflict. I figured. I'll send notarized documentation this afternoon, he said, including a statement clarifying that your sister has no present or future claim under the trust. Thank you, Major, he added, tone shifting slightly. Your grandfather was explicit about preventing exactly this situation. I know. After hanging up, I sat back in my chair. My grandfather had structured the trust to prevent emotional manipulation. He'd watched Brianna bounce between jobs, rack up credit card debt, and blame everyone else. He'd trusted me not because I was perfect, but because I was steady. Steady isn't dramatic. It's consistent. Around 1400, Detective Hall called again. We've reviewed the additional documents, he said. The trustee confirms the structure you described, and your sister's assertion that she was an equal beneficiary is not supported. That wasn't surprising. What about the bank statements, I asked. Forensic review indicates they were recreated. We're confirming whether that was intentional falsification or ignorance. That distinction mattered. Intent separates confusion from crime. Detective, I said she's under financial pressure. That's not speculation. It's history. We're aware of prior hardship distribution, he replied. She referenced it as proof the money was family funds. It wasn't. I understand. There was a pause on his end. She's maintaining that you verbally promised continued payments. I didn't. Any written agreement? No. Okay. When the call ended, I felt something shift. Up until now, I'd been reacting. Now the documentation was building its own narrative. Later that afternoon, I was called back into the commander's office. Morales was already there with the updated file. Sir. She began the trust structure. Clearly names Major Whitaker as sole beneficiary. The prior $80,000 distribution to the sister was conditional and properly executed by the fiduciary. There is no evidence of misappropriation. The commander nodded slowly. And the IG complaint, he asked. Unsubstantiated at this time, Morales said. No indication of abuse of authority. The XO looked at me. Major, did you at any point threaten your sister with military consequences? No, sir. Did you imply your position would shield you? No, sir. He studied my face for a second longer than necessary. Understood. The commander folded his hands again. At this point, he said, we see no misconduct. However, the complaint exists. That means records will reflect it was reviewed. Your conduct during this matters. I understand, sir. Continue to document everything he said. No direct engagement beyond what's necessary. Yes, sir. As I stood to leave, he added one more line. Family conflicts can get messy. Don't let it get emotional in uniform. It wasn't a reprimand. It was advice. Back in my office, my phone lit up again. Brianna. I let it ring. Then a text appeared. Mom is crying. You've humiliated us. Humiliation. That word again. This wasn't about legality. It was about narrative. To her, the story was simple older sister in uniform hoards money. Parents suffer. Reality was less dramatic. I typed one sentence. Direct all communication to the trustee. I didn't send anything else. An hour later, another email came from Thomas Klein. Attached was a notarized statement confirming irrevocable trust. Sole beneficiary. No obligation to distribute funds to Brianna or parents. Conditional support previously extended and terminated due to non-compliance. I forwarded it to JAG and the XO. Paper stacking on paper. By early evening, Detective Hall called one more time. We're meeting with your sister tomorrow to clarify discrepancies, he said, specifically regarding the fabricated bank statements. Understood. If the documents were knowingly falsified, this becomes a different matter. How different? False reporting carries consequences. That phrase hung in the air. False reporting. Not theft. Not misappropriation. False reporting. After we ended the call, I sat at my desk and looked at the stack of printed documents in front of me. Trust agreement. Distribution memo. Notarized confirmation. Financial disclosures. A clean trail. The allegation that started as a criminal accusation was now being measured against signatures and timestamps. Outside my window, soldiers crossed the parking lot heading home for the day. Normal movement. Normal routine. Inside my email pinged again. New message from Inspector General's office. Additional clarification requested regarding prior family financial interactions. I opened it. They wanted a timeline of every contact with Brianna related to money in the last 5 years. Every contact. That meant digging through old messages, archived emails, transaction notes. Family history now required chronological order. I reached for my laptop and began sorting by date. If this was going to be reviewed, it would be reviewed accurately. I started with the oldest emails and worked forward, building a clean timeline of every money-related conversation with Brianna over the last 5 years. Date. Topic. Outcome. No emotion. Just facts. 3 years ago, hardship request. 2 years ago, missed counseling follow-up. 18 months ago, request for additional distribution denied by trustee. 1 year ago, argument over fairness. 6 months ago, no contact. There were no threats. No pressure from me. No leverage of rank. The most aggressive thing I'd written in 5 years was, "This isn't how the trust works." I exported everything into a single PDF and sent it to IG and JAG before lunch. By 1300, the Inspector General's office called me back in. Same civilian investigator. Same calm room. "We've reviewed your submission," she said. "The documentation aligns with the trustee's statement." I nodded. "Your sister, however, has expanded her complaint." Of course she had. "She now alleges that you intimidated your parents into supporting your interpretation of the trust."
How?
She claims you used your military position to make them believe legal consequences would follow if they challenged you. That didn't happen. Do you have any communication with your parents regarding the trust? Minimal, I said. They've mostly stayed out of it. That was technically true. They'd called me exactly once after the $80,000 payment years ago. My father had said, "Help your sister." I told him the trustee would decide based on conditions. That was the end of it. The investigator typed steadily. Have you ever implied that your Army position would protect you from civil litigation? No. She looked up. Major, we don't see evidence of abuse of authority. But when someone uses phrases like, she hides behind her uniform, it suggests perceived imbalance. Perceived doesn't equal real, I said. Correct. She closed her laptop. At this time, we are not recommending command action. However, the complaint remains part of the record. That was the Army version of neutral. When I left the IG office, my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Brianna. It was my mother. I hesitated before answering. Hi. You've gone too far, she said immediately. Her voice wasn't hysterical. It was tired. Mom, I haven't done anything. Police, military offices, investigators. Your sister is scared. She filed the complaint. She thinks you stole from the family. There is no family allocation in the trust. Silence. She says Grandpa promised equal distribution before he died. Then it would be in writing. You know how he was, she replied. Old-fashioned. Yes. Which is why he wrote everything down. She exhaled sharply. Your sister is under pressure, she said. She needs help. I already helped. That wasn't enough. There it was. Not about theft, not about crime. About expectation. I'm not discussing this on a military line, I said calmly. If there's paperwork, send it to the trustee. You've changed, she said. No, I answered. I haven't. We ended the call without resolution. Back at my office, the XO stepped in. County's asking for clarification on intent, he said. Specifically regarding the fabricated bank statements. They're confirmed fabricated, I asked. Strongly suspected. Forensic indicators point to manual creation. That crossed a line. Mistaken interpretation of a trust is one thing. Creating fake bank statements is another. Has she admitted anything, I asked? Not yet. The XO leaned against the doorframe. Off the record, he said this is starting to look less like confusion and more like pressure tactics. I didn't respond. He left with a short nod. Around 1600, Detective Hall called again. We met with your sister this morning, he said. And she maintains that the bank statements reflect what she believes happened. Belief doesn't generate account numbers. I agree. He paused. She also stated that you could resolve this if you were willing to share control of the trust. There it was. Control. Not fairness. Not clarity. Control. Did she specify how, I asked? She mentioned signing authority or co-trustee status. That explained the earlier text about paperwork. She doesn't have legal standing for that, I said. I'm aware. Another pause. Major. He said, voice shifting slightly when we pressed her on the source of the documents. She said she reconstructed them to show what should have happened. Reconstructed. That's not reconstruction, I said. That's fabrication. We're evaluating whether it meets statutory criteria for false reporting. There it was again. False reporting. Not a misunderstanding. Not a dispute. A potential charge. After the call, I stared at the wall for a few seconds. Brianna wasn't just angry. She was escalating. At 1700, the battalion commander called me in again. Update, he said. Legal believes the bank statements were intentionally altered. Yes, sir. That changes perception. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't angry. He was clinical. If civilian authorities determine false reporting, that shifts this entirely outside your sphere of concern, he said. Until then, you remain on duty. Yes, sir. He leaned back. Major, understand this. When someone files repeated complaints referencing rank and money, it can create noise in the system. Noise doesn't equal guilt, but it creates friction. I understand. Maintain composure. Maintain documentation. I will. As I stood to leave, he added one more line. If there's any indication of retaliation from you toward your sister, that becomes a separate issue. Keep distance. Yes, sir. Retaliation wasn't my concern. Containment was. That night, Brianna sent another text. You could stop all of this tomorrow. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened the trustee's notarized letter again and read it carefully. Irrevocable. Sole beneficiary. No entitlement. Clear. Around 2100, my phone rang again. Detective Hall. We're drafting a supplemental report, he said. It may include language regarding potential false statements. Understood. Before we finalize, I need to ask directly. Did you at any point offer to transfer control of the trust? No. Did you imply military consequences if she continued? No. He exhaled lightly. All right. After the call ended, I set the phone down and looked at the stack of documents on my kitchen table. Trust agreement. Notarized statement. Distribution memo. Financial disclosures. Email timeline. Paper against paper. In the Army, clarity usually wins. But clarity takes time, and Brianna was still sending messages. I stopped reading her messages and started organizing everything the investigators might ask for next. Screenshots of texts, call logs, the full PDF timeline I'd already sent to IG. I labeled each file clearly, dates in the title, no ambiguity. At 08:30 the next morning, Detective Hall asked me to come to the Base Visitor Center conference room. County detectives don't just walk into secure areas, so coordination ran through military police. Standard procedure. When I walked in, Hall was seated with a second detective and one MP officer. No hostility, just paperwork. We wanted to clarify a few financial points directly, Hall said. Understood. He slid a printed copy of the bank statements across the table. These are the documents your sister submitted. I didn't need to study them long. Wrong font spacing. Account number formatting inconsistent with the bank's standard. No routing footer. It looked like something built in a spreadsheet and exported to PDF. She claimed these show you transferred funds from the trust into a personal account, Hall said. I don't control trust transfers, I replied. The fiduciary does. Right. The second detective spoke up. We contacted the bank listed here. They confirmed this statement was not issued by them. That landed with quiet weight. Did she provide original digital files, I asked. She provided PDFs only. Metadata shows recent creation date. After the complaint, yes. I folded my hands on the table. Detective, I have nothing to add beyond what's already documented. Hall nodded. There's another element, he said. Your sister told us she reconstructed these documents to demonstrate what she believes happened. Reconstructed is not the same as fabricated, I said, evenly. That's what we're evaluating. He tapped the papers lightly. Intent matters. If she knowingly created false financial documents and presented them to law enforcement as authentic, that meets criteria for false reporting. The MP officer remained silent, observing. Has she acknowledged they're not official bank statements, I asked. She's using the word interpretation, Hall said. Of course she was. Did she state why she didn't simply obtain official records, I asked. She said she doesn't have access to the trust account. She never did. Hall nodded once. We also need clarification regarding a text message you sent stating she should direct paperwork to the trustee. I can provide the full conversation thread. I'd appreciate that. I handed over the export I'd prepared the night before. Clean timestamps, no edits, no missing entries. The second detective reviewed it briefly. There's no threatening language here, he said. No, I replied. After another round of procedural questions, Hall closed the folder. At this stage, we're leaning toward classification as a false complaint. However, we need one more interview with her to address inconsistencies. Classification. That meant direction was shifting. Back at the battalion, the XO stopped me in the hallway. Legal briefed the commander, he said quietly. Bank statements confirmed fraudulent. Understood. Security is satisfied. There's no financial misconduct on your end. That was important. However, he added, because the allegation referenced misuse of federal position, it remains documented. It would sit in a system somewhere. Reviewed, closed, filed. Reputation isn't about perfection. It's about pattern. Inside my office, I pulled up my promotion file and scanned through it. Evaluation reports, awards, deployment records, professional military education certificates. $500,000 wasn't just a number in an accusation. It was a weight that could distort perception if left unanswered. At 1400, the security manager called. Just so you're tracking, he said, we've confirmed there's no derogatory financial data in your clearance history. No unexplained assets. No debt anomalies. Thank you. As long as civilian authorities don't substantiate misconduct, this won't trigger adjudication. Won't trigger. That phrase mattered. My phone buzzed again. Brianna. This time I answered. What do you want? I asked calmly. You think you're winning, she said immediately. This isn't a competition. You embarrassed me. You filed a police report. You stole from the family. There is no family allocation in the trust. You could fix this, she snapped. Just make me co-trustee. Sign partial control. That's all I asked. That's not your decision to make. You hide behind paperwork, she said. You hide behind that uniform. I hide behind documentation because it's accurate. She went quiet for a second. Mom says you're tearing us apart. I didn't create false bank statements. Silence again. You're choosing money over family. No, I said. I'm choosing legality over chaos. She hung up. I placed the phone down slowly. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about fairness. It was about control. Later that afternoon, Hall called again. We interviewed her a second time, he said. And, when confronted with bank verification, she admitted she created the statements herself. There it was. Did she admit knowing they weren't authentic, I asked. She stated she was showing what should have happened. Did she understand presenting them as real documents to police was misleading? She didn't answer directly. Intent doesn't require confession. It requires action. We're preparing documentation recommending review for false reporting, Hall said. No arrest today. But it's no longer a theft investigation. That line mattered more than anything else he could have said. No longer a theft investigation. I thanked him and ended the call. At 1700, the commander called me in again. Update, he said. Civilian authorities are pivoting the case. Yes, sir. From what I'm told, the allegation lacks evidentiary support. Yes, sir. He studied me carefully. Major understands something. Your sister escalated this to law enforcement and referenced your rank. That's serious. But you handled it correctly. No retaliation. No emotional response. I followed procedure, sir. That's the point. He stood signaling the conversation was done. Continue mission, he said. As I walked back to my office, the building felt normal again. People moved through hallways. Phones rang. Doors opened and closed. But this wasn't finished in the way most people think about finished. Paperwork was still moving, and Brianna wasn't done trying to frame it her way. I checked my access badge before walking into the building the next morning. Green light. It was a small thing, but when your clearance is tied to a piece of plastic, small things matter. Even though the theft angle was collapsing, the allegations still existed in the system. And systems don't erase themselves overnight. At 0830, the security manager asked me to stop by. He didn't look alarmed. He looked procedural. We received notification that civilian authorities are considering classification of the complaint as false reporting, he said. However, until that's finalized, we're conducting a limited review. Limited how I asked. Standard clearance posture check. No suspension. Just verification that there are no undisclosed financial issues. I've disclosed everything. I know. This is formality. Formality can still feel like scrutiny. He opened a file on his desk. Have you incurred any new debt in the last 6 months? No. Any loans to family members? No. Any unusual deposits? No. He typed steadily. Your financial disclosures match what we've already got, he said. No red flags. Red flags. That phrase had been hovering for days. Promotion board is still tracking, I asked. Yes, he replied. Nothing in your record indicates derogatory financial conduct. Nothing in your record. That mattered. Back in my office, I tried to focus on actual work. Cyber vulnerabilities don't care about family drama. Systems either patch or they don't. But every email notification made my pulse jump slightly. At 1100, the XO stepped in. Quick update, he said. Command has decided not to restrict your system access during review. Understood. That decision wasn't automatic, he added. It was deliberate, meaning it had been discussed, meaning someone weighed risk. I appreciate the transparency, I said. He nodded once and left. Transparency cuts both ways. I had nothing to hide, but being evaluated is never comfortable. Around noon, Brianna texted again. You're about to lose more than money. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the message to Detective Hall and the security manager. Documentation over reaction. 10 minutes later, Hall called. She sent similar language during our interview, he said. We're adding it to the file. Does it change anything, I asked? It reinforces motive. Motive for what? For pressure. He didn't need to elaborate. Later that afternoon, the battalion commander called a short meeting with me and the XO. Here's where we stand, he said. Civilian investigation is nearly complete. No substantiated theft. No substantiated misuse of federal position. We are not initiating adverse action. That should have felt like relief. Instead, it felt like stabilization. There is one caveat, he continued. If your sister escalates again, new complaints, new allegations will reassess. Understood. He leaned back in his chair. Major. When personal issues bleed into professional space, the best response is discipline. You've maintained that. Yes, sir. Keep it that way. When I left his office, I exhaled for the first time all day. But that night, the tension came back. My phone rang at 20:15. It was my father. I hadn't heard his voice in weeks. "You've gone too far," he said immediately. "I haven't filed anything. You let this turn into police involvement. She filed the report. She thought you stole from us. There was nothing to steal. You could have settled this quietly." "How?" "By sharing control." "Control again." "It's not mine to share," I said. "It's governed by a fiduciary." "You always hide behind paperwork," he said. "I followed the document Grandpa signed. He trusted you." "Yes." "That doesn't mean you cut family out." "I didn't cut anyone out," I said evenly. "There was never an allocation." Silence stretched for a moment. "She's under a lot of stress," he said finally. "That doesn't justify false reports." He didn't argue that point. "Just fix it," he said. "There's nothing to fix." He hung up. The next morning, I arrived on base earlier than usual. I wanted to see the green light on my badge again. It blinked. Access granted. At 900, Detective Hall called with a different tone than before. "We completed our review," he said. "There is no basis for theft. The documentation provided by your sister was knowingly inaccurate." "Knowingly." That means I asked. "We're classifying this as false reporting and submission of falsified documents." I didn't speak for a second. "What does that look like?" I asked. "It means the focus shifts. You're no longer under review for theft." That was the cleanest sentence I'd heard all week. "And her?" I asked. "She'll be answering questions under that framework." After the call ended, I sat in silence for a moment. False reporting, not misunderstanding, not dispute. False reporting. At 1000, I was back in the commander's office. "County has pivoted the case," he said. "Yes, sir." "From theft to false reporting." "Yes, sir." He nodded slowly. "That removes any pending consideration of access restriction," he said. "Your clearance remains unaffected." Unaffected. That word settled deeper than relief. The XO glanced at me. "Promotion board packet remains unchanged," he said. Unchanged. The commander stood. "You handled this appropriately," he said. "Not emotionally, not defensively, by the book." "I followed procedure, sir." "That's why it worked." As I walked back toward my office, the hallway noise sounded normal again. Conversations. Laughter. Someone arguing about printer toner. Routine. My phone buzzed once more. "Brianna." I let it ring. Then a voicemail notification appeared. I didn't open it immediately. Instead, I logged into my workstation and pulled up the task list for the day. Access intact. Role intact. Record intact. Paper had done its job. I deleted the voicemail without listening to it and went back to reviewing a contractor's compliance report. If she had something important to say, she could say it to a detective. At 10:30, Detective Hall called again. "We met with your sister this morning," he said. "And she brought an attorney." "That was smart," I said. "Yes," he replied evenly. "But she also made a statement that clarifies motive." I didn't respond. I let him continue. "When we asked why she presented reconstructed bank statements instead of seeking official records, she said she needed to demonstrate the impact of what you did." Impact. That's her word. "And what did she believe I did?" "She said you withheld money that rightfully belonged to the family." "It didn't." "I understand. That's not the key part." There was a slight pause. When pressed about why she filed a police report instead of pursuing civil litigation, she stated, quote, "I just needed her to be scared enough to sign." The sentence landed clean and heavy. Scared enough to sign. Not confused, not misled. Scared. Sign what I asked. Co-trustee documentation. Or partial control agreement, which doesn't exist, I said. Correct. Silence filled the space for a second. "Detective, I said that statement confirms intent." It does. "And presenting fabricated documents to law enforcement to generate fear meets the threshold. We're recommending charges for false reporting and filing false documents," he said calmly. "The state's attorney will review." That was the first time the word charges had entered the conversation without qualification. After we ended the call, I sat back in my chair and let the quiet settle. Scared enough to sign. It wasn't about money. It wasn't even about fairness. It was leverage. Around 1300, the XO stepped into my office. "County confirmed your sister admitted she filed the report to pressure you," he said. "Yes." He leaned against the doorframe. "Off the record, that's one of the cleaner admissions I've seen. She didn't think it through." "No," he said. "She thought the pressure would work." That part was accurate. Pressure inside a military structure can be intimidating. Rank process investigation review boards. If I were unstable or hiding something or easily rattled, it might have worked. "I'm glad you documented everything," he added. "So am I." At 1500, I was called back into the commander's office. He had the updated summary from civilian authorities on his desk. She admitted filing the complaint to induce compliance, he said without preamble. Yes, sir. That eliminates ambiguity. He looked directly at me. Major, this was not a misunderstanding. It was coercive intent. Yes, sir. And she referenced your rank as a factor in her strategy. She did. He folded his hands. You understand why that concerns us? Yes, sir. When someone attempts to weaponize the perception of military authority for personal leverage, we take that seriously. I understand. He studied my expression carefully. Your response was correct, he said. You did not engage emotionally. You did not retaliate. You documented. Yes, sir. He nodded once. This is no longer a matter of your conduct. It is a matter of her conduct. That distinction mattered more than anything else he could have said. After I left his office, I walked back through the building with a steady pace. No whispers, no stares, just routine movement. Back at my desk, I finally opened the voicemail she had left earlier. Her voice was tight. You're destroying this family over paperwork. You think you're untouchable. You think the army will protect you forever. I let it play to the end without reacting. She still believed the uniform was a shield. It wasn't. It was a system. Later that evening, Detective Hall called again. Quick update, he said. We informed your sister that her admission changes the case posture. How did she respond? She said you forced her into this by refusing to cooperate. Cooperate with what? Her request for shared control. There it was again. Control. She maintains that the trust is morally wrong, he added. Morality isn't the statute, I replied. No, it isn't. He paused. I want to be clear, he said. From our standpoint, this is now a false reporting case with documented intent to coerce. Understood. After the call ended, I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling, scared enough to sign. The phrase replayed in my head. Brianna didn't believe I stole money. She believed fear would move me faster than negotiation. That night, my mother texted, "We can still fix this." I didn't respond. Instead, I opened the trustees' portal and added a note requesting that any future inquiry about the trust from third parties be documented formally. Paper trail. Boundaries. The next morning, I arrived at work and passed through the gate. Green light. At 0930, the security manager stopped by. Civilian authorities confirmed admission, he said. We're closing our internal review. Clearance unaffected. Correct. He paused. You handled it the right way. Procedure handled it, I said. He gave a short nod. That afternoon, an official memorandum from county authorities was sent to the base summarizing their findings. False reporting. Submission of falsified documents. Admission of coercive intent. The words were clinical, but they were final in tone. As I sat in my office reading the summary, my phone buzzed again. A text from Brianna. You think this makes you better than me? I placed the phone face down on the desk and turned back to my computer screen. Better wasn't the point. Accurate was. I left my phone face down on the desk and opened the memorandum from county authorities again, reading every line carefully. False reporting. Submission of falsified financial documents. Intent to induce compliance through fear of criminal investigation. There was no mention of theft tied to my name. That mattered. At 1000, I was back in the commander's office. He had the same document printed in front of him. County has formally reclassified the complaint, he said. You are not under investigation. Yes, sir. They're forwarding the case to the state's attorney for review regarding false reporting. Yes, sir. He studied me for a moment. This concludes any consideration of adverse action on your clearance, he said. Security has closed their review. Closed. That word landed differently than unaffected. Promotion board packet remains clean, the XO added. No annotations. No annotations. That meant this entire week would exist in files, but not in evaluation language. The commander leaned back. Major. This could have gone differently if you had reacted emotionally, he said. You did not. I didn't want emotion in a record, I replied. He gave the smallest nod of approval. Understood. As I stood to leave, he added one more line. Maintain distance. Let civilian authorities handle the rest. Yes, sir. Back in my office, I called Detective Hall. I received the memorandum, I said. Yes, he replied. We're submitting charges for false reporting and filing falsified documents. It's now in the prosecutor's hands. Will she be arrested? Not immediately, he said. Likely a summons. That was realistic. This won't involve the Army further, I asked. No. From our standpoint, you're a reporting party now, not a subject. Subject. That word had followed me around for days. It was gone. Thank you, I said. Major, he added. I'll be direct. Filing a police report with fabricated financial evidence is serious. The admission that she intended to scare you strengthens the case. I understand. Your documentation helped. After the call ended, I leaned back in my chair and let the quiet settle. The system had corrected itself. Not dramatically, not loudly, just line by line. Around noon, my father called again. I let it ring once before answering. They're charging her, he asked without greeting. That's what the detective said. You could tell them to stop. That's not how this works. You started this. I didn't file the report. She panicked. She fabricated documents. Silence. You're her sister, he said finally. Yes, and you're choosing the police over family. I'm choosing accuracy over pressure. You could have signed. There was nothing to sign. He exhaled heavily. She didn't mean to make it criminal. She presented false evidence to law enforcement. He didn't argue that. You've always been rigid, he said. I've always been documented. He hung up. I stared at the wall for a few seconds. Rigid. That word had followed me since I enlisted. In the Army, rigid is often another word for reliable. At 1400, the security manager stopped by one last time. We've officially closed the internal review, he said. Your clearance status remains unchanged. There is no derogatory entry. Appreciate it, Major, he added. Not everyone would have handled this without escalating. Escalating how? Calling back. Threatening countersuits. Making it personal. I kept it procedural. That's why it worked. After he left, I opened my promotion file one more time. Every evaluation report, every deployment, every recommendation. Nothing altered. No footnotes, no comments. The narrative remained intact. Later that afternoon, Detective Hall called with a final update for the day. She's been issued notice to appear, he said. We've documented her admission and the falsified documents. Understood. She's claiming emotional distress. That doesn't change the paperwork. No, he agreed. He paused. I want you to hear this clearly. From a law enforcement perspective, you did nothing wrong. That sentence felt heavier than the others. Thank you. We'll keep you informed if needed. But from here, it's largely administrative. Administrative. The week had started with police walking into my meeting. It was ending with paperwork moving in the opposite direction. After work, I sat in my car for a moment before driving home. The base traffic flowed normally. Soldiers in PT gear. Contractors heading out. No one knew the details. No one needed to. At home, my phone buzzed again. Brianna. This time I answered. You really went through with it, she said. I didn't do anything. You let them charge me. You admitted you filed a false report. You forced me. I didn't. You could have signed. There was nothing to sign. She was breathing harder now. You care more about money than blood. It's not about money. Then what is it about? Boundaries. Silence stretched on the line. You've always thought you were better, she said quietly. No, I replied. I've always followed the document. She hung up without another word. I placed the phone down and walked into the kitchen. My son was at the table doing homework. How was work? He asked. Busy, I said. Good busy or bad busy? Paperwork busy. He nodded like that made perfect sense. Later that night, I opened the trustee portal one more time. Everything intact, every figure accurate. No missing funds. No unauthorized withdrawals. The trust hadn't changed. The accusation had. And now the file had her name on it instead of mine. I closed the trustee portal and opened a new document titled Preventative Actions. If someone is willing to file a false police report once you don't assume they're done, you assume they'll look for another angle. First call was to a security clearance attorney recommended quietly by another officer years ago. Not because I expected a new investigation, but because prevention is cheaper than repair. He listened to a short summary and asked 3 questions. Any undisclosed assets? No. Any unresolved debt? No. Any contact from federal investigators beyond local police? No. Then you're stable, he said. Document everything and don't engage emotionally. If she attempts civil action, you'll want representation, but from a clearance standpoint, you're solid. Solid. I hung up and made the next call to Thomas Klein, the trustee. I'd like a standing note added to the file, I said. Any inquiry about the trust from family members should be documented and responded to in writing only. Already done, he replied. After the police contact, we flagged the account. Appreciate it, Major. You're not the first beneficiary with relatives who misunderstand irrevocable means irrevocable. I'm guessing I won't be the last. He chuckled lightly. Boundaries exist for a reason. Next, I called my bank and placed a fraud alert on my personal accounts. Not because there was evidence of misuse, but because escalation tends to come in waves. After that, I drafted a short memo for record summarizing the closure of the internal review, the civilian reclassification of the complaint, and the absence of clearance impact. I attached the county memorandum and saved everything in a folder labeled Personal Legal. Paper. Always paper. The following Monday, I walked into battalion headquarters and checked my email. There was a message from the security manager. Administrative review formally closed. No further action required. No further action required. The phrase was plain, almost boring. That's how you want these things to end. At 1000, I had a routine sync with the commander. We didn't mention my sister at first. We discussed mission updates, personnel adjustments, upcoming training cycles. As the meeting wrapped, he paused. Major, for the record, the matter involving your family is considered resolved at this level. Yes, sir. There will be no notation in your OER. Yes, sir. He gave a small nod. You maintained professionalism. I maintained documentation. That too. When I left his office, the hallway felt exactly the same as it had before any of this started. That was the point. Reputation isn't about dramatic victories. It's about steady presence. That evening, a certified letter arrived at my house. Return address, Office of the State's Attorney. Inside was a copy of the notice sent to Brianna. Formal charge, false reporting to law enforcement. Submission of falsified documents. No theatrics, just legal language. I placed it back in the envelope and set it in my file drawer. My phone buzzed shortly after. A text from Brianna. You could still stop this. I stared at the screen for a few seconds. Then I typed one sentence. All communication goes through counsel. I didn't add anything else. Minutes later, another text. You're really choosing them over us. There was no them. There was documentation and there was emotion. I didn't reply. The next morning, my father called again. You've made your point, he said. This isn't about a point. She's facing charges. She admitted filing false documents. She was desperate. Desperation doesn't rewrite statutes. You could testify in her favor. I won't lie. Silence. You always follow rules, he said quietly. Yes. You think that makes you right. It keeps things clear. He didn't respond to that. After we ended the call, I sat at the kitchen table for a moment, watching my son pack his backpack. You okay? He asked. I'm good, I said. Work's still busy. Less paperwork now. He nodded like that was a complete explanation. Back at base, I ran my badge again. Green light. I passed through the doors, walked to my office, and sat down at my desk. No MPS in the hallway. No detectives waiting. Just mission emails and task lists. At noon, the XO stopped by. Everything squared away, he asked. Yes. Good. Promotion board convenes next month. I'm tracking. He paused. Off the record, not everyone could have kept their composure through that. I didn't have the luxury of losing it. He gave a small half smile. That's why you're still here. After he left, I opened my evaluation draft for the upcoming board. Duty, performance, leadership, integrity. Integrity isn't tested when things are easy. It's tested when someone tries to use the system against you. Later that afternoon, Detective Hall called one last time. Just confirming receipt of the prosecutor's notice, he said. I received it. You won't be required to appear unless subpoenaed. Understood. Major, he added, this case started with a serious allegation against you. It ended with documentation against her. That's not common. It's what the paperwork supported. He paused briefly. You handled it the right way. After we ended the call, I closed the folder on my desk and slid it into the cabinet. The trust remained intact. My clearance remained intact. My career remained intact. The accusation that began with police walking into my meeting now existed as a closed review in a file. And in my phone, Brianna's contact remained muted. I didn't win because I argued better. I didn't win because I had rank on my chest. I won because I stayed inside the system and let documentation do its job. My sister said I stole $500,000. Police walked into my meeting. My career was put under a microscope, and the only thing that kept it steady was transparency. Family drama feels personal. Military service is not. When those two collide, emotion will try to pull you off course. Paperwork keeps you straight. In the end, it wasn't about money. It was about pressure. It was about someone believing fear would move me faster than facts. It didn't. If you've ever dealt with family conflict, false accusations, or someone trying to weaponize authority against you, you know how heavy that pressure can feel. The lesson isn't revenge. It's boundaries. It's process. It's knowing that calm beats chaos when everything is documented. Stories like this real military career, stakes mixed with family revenge and public accusations, happen more often than people think. And they don't end with shouting. They end with records. If you enjoy military family revenge stories grounded in real-life consequences, subscribe to the channel. There are more stories about career threats, family betrayal, and how staying disciplined under pressure can change the outcome.